Hi everyone, thanks for taking the time to watch this introduction to the Dreamers Graduate Loan Program. I'm super excited to be here today to talk through some key details of the loan program, as well as define some key terms pertaining to loans. So today, I'll be walking through an overview of the loan program, including eligibility criteria, defining some key aspects of student loans, and also briefly touch on other loan opportunities open to students with DACA status. So with that said, I think it would be helpful to first level set around a few key principles underlying the Dreamers Graduate Loan Program. The overarching objective of the program is to enable all of you to attend graduate school and achieve your professional goals with manageable debt. This manifests itself in a few different ways throughout the loan program. Firstly, we want to support you in obtaining graduate degrees that prepare you for well-paying careers with advancement potential. Secondly, we want to identify institutions and degree programs that set students up well to obtain in-demand jobs with starting salaries that are high enough to support the debt burden students take on to attend graduate school. Thirdly, we want to minimize your debt burden associated with graduate school. So one way we are doing this is by providing the Dream.Us alumni with loans that have annual percentage rates, or APRs, based on the APR of the federal Grad Plus loan program. As we'll talk in more detail later, an APR is the true annual cost of funds that are incurred to borrow money. Additionally, we want to keep the terms of the program as simple as possible. We know navigating student loans can be overwhelming, and we want to make sure all of you understand exactly what is expected of you and what you can expect of the program before you take out a loan. And finally, which is one of my favorite parts of the loan, is the pay it forward component. A portion of students' repayments are reinvested into the loan fund to enable us to finance loans for future students. So again, just to reiterate, our primary objective is to support all of you and future alumni to attend graduate school, achieve your professional aspirations, but do so with manageable debt loads. All right. So getting into the meat of the loan program, I do want to spend some time on the eligibility requirements and the terms of the loan. There are eligibility requirements for students, degrees, and institutions. So starting with students, you must either have DACA or TPS immigration status, be the Dream.Us alumni, be accepted into an eligible graduate degree program, which I will talk about in more detail momentarily, and be a resident of an eligible state. You'll also need to have a social security number, but if you don't have one at the time of your application, we can assist you with obtaining one. So please still apply even if you don't yet have a social security number. On the eligible state piece, state eligibility is based on your state of residence at the time of loan application. Currently, Washington, D.C. and 15 states are ineligible based on where the loan originator has lending licenses. This may change in the future, but for the spring, if you live in one of the 16 locations listed on the left of this slide, you will unfortunately be unable to obtain a loan through this program at this current point in time. Great. So the last piece on student eligibility, there are a number of credit knockout criteria that would result in ineligibility for a loan. A credit score is not part of the eligibility criteria, so if you don't have a credit score, that's totally fine. However, a credit check will still be pulled as part of the application process. So for credit knockout criteria, students who have defaulted on any loan in the past, have multiple delinquencies associated with more than 2 unique instances, collection items, liens, or judgments that exceed $500, not including medical debt, or currently are previously involved in bankruptcy proceedings will be ineligible for a loan under this program. If you're unsure whether any of the credit knockout criteria is applicable to you, we still encourage you to apply. Awesome. So I know that was a lot of information to digest, but want to continue on to discuss the eligible degree programs and institutions. So as I mentioned earlier, the key guiding principle is centered around providing loans to students whose graduate degree programs are cost-effective and result in jobs with starting salaries high enough to allow a student to repay their debt reasonably and sustainably. With that in mind, we looked at federal loan program guidance around how much student loan debt is reasonable for a student to undertake, which is how we've arrived at a debt-to-income ratio threshold of 15%. So what this means is that if the average annual expected loan payment for a given degree is less than or equal to 15% of the average expected income for someone with that degree, then that program is eligible. Although this also assumes that the degree prepares students for careers with high labor market growth over the next 10 years. So to reiterate, the analysis we went through to determine eligible degree programs was first calculating expected DTIs for the degree program, and then layering on a second filter so that only degree programs that prepared students for high growth in-demand jobs with expected DTIs less than or equal to 15% remained. For more information on the full list of eligible degrees, you can look on the Dream.Us website under the Scholar Hub and navigate over to graduate loans, and there will be a link to the full list there. For students whose programs aren't listed on the application, please reach out to Funding University if you are planning to apply for a loan as soon as possible so we can determine whether the degree program meets the eligibility requirements. The last piece on eligibility is around institutions. We use Department of Education data on historic cohort default rates to assess whether an institution successfully prepares students for careers in their chosen field. Cohort default rates are a measure of the percent of students who take out loans to finance their education who have defaulted or otherwise been unable to repay their loan. Institutions must have a historic cohort default rate less than or equal to 8%. Although the Dream.Us partner institutions with cohort default rates between 8 to 12% may be eligible pending an additional review with the Dream.Us staff. Like the list of eligible degrees, the full list of eligible institutions is also available on the Dream.Us website under the Scholar Hub in the graduate loans section. One brief note on the list of institutions: there are some institutions listed that don't offer eligible graduate degree programs, so please just be sure to cross-check eligible degrees with your chosen institution. And with that, I will move us on to the key aspects of the loan program. So looking at key terms, we tried to keep them as simple and straightforward as possible to make sure students understand the exact parameters and conditions of their obligations under the loan program. So starting with the key terms in the top left, the loan program will have a fixed interest rate of 7.2%. For reference, interest rates are the premium you're charged for borrowing money, and a fixed interest rate means that the rate charged on a loan will remain the same throughout a set period, typically the length of the loan. One point I do want to stress is that though the interest rate is fixed in the loan program, loans taken out in different years are different loans, and therefore they may actually have different annual percentage rates, or APRs. For the Dreamers graduate loan program, the APR is the same as the interest rate, which is 7.2% for the 2021 to 2022 academic year. This is because outside of the interest rate, there are no other fees or costs charged to borrowers. Moving on to loan amounts and borrower incentives. Loans taken out under the Dreamers graduate loan program will have either 10-year or 20-year repayment periods. The repayment period will depend on the expected debt load relative to expected post-graduation income of a student. So if a 10-year repayment period results in a debt-to-income ratio greater than 15%, the student will have a 20-year repayment period. Repayment periods begin 6 months after graduation, which is your grace period, at which point you would then be expected to start making principal and interest payments to repay your loan. So in terms of how much you can borrow, the minimum loan amount excuse me, is $5,000, but may be higher based on certain state regulations. The maximum loan amount varies by degree. So for each degree, there is a maximum annual loan amount, which students cannot exceed in a given academic year. There is also a cumulative program level loan cap, which students can't exceed over the course of their entire degree program. So for example, if you're pursuing an MBA degree, you're eligible to borrow up to $100,000 in a year, but no more than $200,000 for your entire degree program. For context, the loan caps were set based on a 20% debt-to-income ratio on a 20-year loan for someone completing that specific degree program to account for differences in cost of attendance among institutions. The loan caps are found in the list of eligible degrees in the Scholar Hub on the TheDream.Us website. So you can see both annual and cumulative program level loan caps for every single eligible degree in that list. Other aspects of the loan program that I do want to cover as well is that there is a 0.25% interest rate discount incentive for those enrolling in auto pay. Likewise, while there won't be any late charges or prepayment penalties, there is a standard return to payment fee of $25. As an aside, prepayment is highly encouraged if you're able to, since it will reduce the overall cost of the loan over its lifetime. And again, there's never any penalty to doing so. Great. So now that we've covered kind of the key terms and also loan amounts and borrowing incentives, you're probably wondering what happens once you've taken the loan out. So we are going to split this into your in-school years and then your post-graduation years. While you're in school, you have two repayment options. The default option for all students will be full deferment of principal and interest, meaning you're not expected to make any payments towards your loan while you're in school. The other option while in school is a $25 per month payment. If you choose this option and find you're unable to make the $25 payment for any reason, you will be automatically placed into full deferment and there will be no negative impact to your credit history while in school. Regardless of which option you choose, interest will accrue on the loan from the moment of disbursement until full repayment. Now, moving over to what happens once you've graduated and your 6-month grace period has ended. At this point, you will then be expected to make equal principal and interest payments, which requires consecutive monthly payments of principal and interest that's not needed to pay the loan in full within the remaining number of months in your repayment period. For those who find they aren't able to make the full P&I payment in a given month, alternative payment plans will be available, such as a period of up to 12 months of interest-only payments over the life of the loan. Alternative repayment options may increase the overall cost of the loan and may also increase the monthly payment required to pay the loan in full within the remaining number of months in the repayment period. Additionally, if you ever find yourself unable to make the minimum P&I payment required, we strongly encourage you to proactively reach out to the loan servicer, launch servicing, to discuss your options, including forbearance. For those who may not be familiar, student loan forbearance is a way to suspend or lower your student loan payments temporarily, and it's typically granted in 90-day increments during times of financial stress or other specified documentable and verifiable reasons. So the forbearance reasons listed in the bottom right box may have different maximum number of months that may be granted during the life of the loan. For example, under temporary hardship deferment, a student may be granted a maximum of 24 total months of forbearance, but no more than 12 consecutive months, while those who are eligible for in-school and medical residency forbearance may be granted a period of up to 48 months of forbearance. Something which is important to understand is that forbearance, except in limited circumstances, it will extend the maturity of the loan by the duration of the forbearance period. So for example, if you had 12 months of forbearance, then the maturity of the loan would be extended by an additional 12 months. Again, I can't stress enough that it's important to be in contact with launch servicing, the loan servicer, if you're unable to make a payment 1 month. This can help to avoid any potential negative impacts that missing loan payments may have on your credit history. I know this is a ton of information, so appreciate you continuing to bear with me as you listen to this, but I do want to just pause quickly to recap this section before we jump into defining some key loan terminology. So first and foremost, the loans for this year will have an APR of 7.2% with 10 or 20-year repayment periods depending on your expected debt load, and there will be a 6-month grace period after graduation. While you're in school, you can either fully defer payments or make $25 per month payments. After graduation and your grace period will automatically be placed on an equal P&I repayment plan. Always remember that if you can make additional or larger payments, this will help to lower the overall cost of the loan, and there's never any penalty to doing that. Third, students are only eligible to borrow up to the annual loan cap each year for their program, and no more than the cumulative program level cap over the entirety of their degree program. And lastly, if you're finding it difficult to make a payment or multiple payments, please reach out to the loan servicer as soon as possible to see if you're eligible for an alternative repayment plan or one of the forbearance options. All right, so last section before we move on to some alternative loan options available for DACA students with DACA status. So the first key concept we'll define is cost of attendance, which is important for determining how much you will need to borrow. Cost of attendance is the total amount it will cost a student to go to school in a given year. So this includes items like tuition and fees, housing and food related expenses, books and supplies, transportation to and from school, and other miscellaneous expenses, such as the cost of a personal computer. The cost of attendance is determined by your institution for your specific degree program. With that said, there are certain parts of the cost of attendance that are highly variable by individual. In particular, the living expenses portion of your cost of attendance is what you have the most control over. For example, purchasing online textbooks is typically less costly than the physical copies. Likewise, most other costs that fall under the cost of attendance outside of tuition and fees are highly discretionary and up to the student. So it's encouraged to try and reduce your discretionary costs as much as is possible. Only borrow what you absolutely need to borrow and be sure to maximize all other no-cost funding sources, such as scholarships, fellowships, savings, and income, to name a few. Now, I know I've mentioned debt to income ratio at least 100 times in the past 20 or so minutes, so you're probably wondering what exactly that is, how to calculate it, and why it matters. For starters, debt to income ratio, or DTI, is the ratio of your debt payments, including interest, relative to your income. Many experts recommend having an overall DTI of less than 30 to 36% of your gross income. And this includes all other debt you may have, such as medical debt, mortgages, car loans, personal loans, and credit cards. In this loan program, we're using a 15% DTI ratio, as I mentioned before, as a key basis for determining which degree programs are eligible. That way students don't overborrow and you have reasonable and sustainable debt payments once you graduate. So now that you know what DTI is, how do you actually go about calculating it? First, you'll need to estimate how much you will need to borrow for your entire degree program, which is taking your cost of attendance and subtracting any existing funding outside of loans, including savings, scholarships, school-based aid, and other funds. So in the example on the right, the amount you would need to borrow is $45,000. Next, you would need to calculate what your monthly or annual loan payment would be on $45,000. So in this case, given a 10-year repayment period, a 7.2% interest rate, and cumulative total student loans for your degree of $45,000, you will be expected to pay roughly $7,900 a year towards your loan. So let's say you pursued a 1-year master's in public health, and your expected post-graduation earnings are around $55,500 annually. Then your DTI is the roughly $7,900 debt payment with interest divided by your expected annual income post-graduation of $55,500, which gets you to 13% DTI. And just to reiterate, students are only eligible to borrow up to the annual loan cap for the degree program and no more than the cumulative program cap over their entire degree program. So of course, we encourage you to borrow as little as possible. And again, each eligible degree program's loan cap is on the Dream.Us website in the Scholar Hub, which is your central repository for all things Dreamers graduate loan program. Last, but certainly not least, I want to spend some time on the following terms. So capitalization, accrued interest, and loan term. These are extremely important to understand since they directly impact what you will be expected to repay and within what time frame. So first, capitalization is the process of adding any accrued unpaid interest to the principal balance of a loan, which is the amount owed on the loan not including interest. Accrued interest is the interest that has been accumulated on a loan but has not yet been paid. The loan term is the number of years or months during which a borrower is required to make monthly payments in order to repay the loan with interest in full. So a few things I want to call your attention to in this illustrative example is the way in which interest accrues each year, even while you're in school, despite the fact that you're not required to make payments while in school. So the greater the loan amount and the more years you need to take out a loan for, this will result in higher accrued interest. In this example, it assumes a student takes out $20,000 each year of their 4-year degree program for a total of $80,000 in loans. Interest starts accruing on the first $20,000 from the moment it's dispersed. In year 2, then, the student that has a total of $40,000 of loans for which interest is accruing, and so on and so forth. At the end of the in-school period, the accrued unpaid interest is added to the original principal to get the capitalized balance. So in this case, that's the $80,000 in loans taken out over 4 years, plus the $17,280 in accrued interest while in school and during the 6-month grace period over that same time. Again, interest accrues from the moment of disbursement. So the loan taken out in year 1, in this example, will have 4.5 years of accrued interest added to the principal after your in-school and grace period, while the loan taken out in the 4th year of the degree program, in this example, will have 1.5 years of accrued interest added to the principal after your in-school and grace period. Interest will continue to accrue on the outstanding principal during the repayment period, even as you're making monthly payments. So one other thing to note in this example is that the longer the loan term, the lower the monthly payment. However, longer loan terms often also result in more interest paid over time. So in the 10-year loan term, in the example, the student is repaying roughly $139,800. Well, if the same student had a 20-year loan term, they would be repaying a total of about $186,500. So I know I sound like a broken record, but the less you need to borrow, the lower your DTI, which can better position you to have a lower loan term and therefore a lower overall cost to repay the loan while maintaining a manageable monthly loan payment. So this is definitely one of the most important slides. So I definitely encourage you all to spend some time reviewing and looking at it in detail to make sure you understand how capitalization, accrued interest, and loan terms function. So I will end this presentation just going through some other loan options that are available for students with DACA status, so that you're aware, just in case the Dreamers Graduate Loan Program isn't the right fit. We always encourage students to do their own research to find the lowest cost, best possible terms for your loan, for your degree and institution. While I'm not going to walk through each specific option, since this slide is also on the DreamUS website under resources in the Scholar Hub for graduate loans, there are a few important callouts here. So the first is that, yes, there are other existing loan programs that offer loans to students with DACA immigration status to attend graduate school. When you're evaluating these other loan options, be sure to always compare the annual percentage rate across lenders. And this is because an APR is the bottom line all-in number that's easily compared across lenders to understand the true cost of borrowing. Also be sure to understand the terms and conditions of the loans. Different lenders can offer dramatically different options, so it's important to make sure the lender offers student-friendly forbearance, repayment, and other loan terms. Okay, so I know I just covered a ton of information, but to close us out, here are 3 final thoughts for you all. The application for the spring 2022 semester is currently live. Go to the Dream.Us Scholar Hub and navigate over to the Graduate Loans tab, where you can find that link to the application. Funding University, the loan originator, is always available for questions as you're going through the application process. You'll also be required to have a one-on-one loan advisory call with Raul at Funding University, so definitely don't hesitate to reach out to Raul with any questions you have. Second, if you haven't already, please research whether your intended career requires a professional license or certification in the state you're looking to work in, and if you're eligible based on your immigration status. Unfortunately, some states restrict professional licensure to legal permanent residents and citizens, though there are some very notable exceptions, such as California, New Jersey, and New York, to name a few. And lastly, as you're probably tired of hearing me say, borrow as little as possible to cover your grad school costs, and always look to no-cost funding options first. Loans should always be a last resort option for financing your graduate degree. And so with that, I will leave you with this presentation. Thanks for listening, everyone.